Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for making time on this Saturday to join us for the Western Colorado Alliance Town Hall with Senator Bennet. We really appreciate you making the time. My name is Emily Hornback, and I'm the Executive Director of Western Colorado Alliance, and I'm joined by...
I'm Arlo Miller. I'm on the board here at Western Colorado Alliance, and I chair our Just Housing team.
And before we get started, we wanted to ask Antonio to give us just a quick rundown about how interpretation is going to work, because we are doing simultaneous Spanish translation of today's event.
Thank you, Emily. Hi, everybody. Here we are one more time. My name is Antonio. And today, along with my partner interpreter, Carolina, we're going to be providing simultaneous interpretation from English into Spanish. And we just want to ask and acknowledge Western Colorado Alliance for practicing language inclusion. We are so grateful to be part of it. So thank you so much. And once again, we would like to ask anyone participating to just go a slower pace. Spanish requires about 20% more words. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Antonio. We really appreciate you making time. We know we asked 2 weekends in a row from his team, so we super appreciate them being here. All right, so just want to do a couple of quick things before we jump into questions. A lot of us were in a different room around the same time last week, talking to other candidates about Western Colorado issues. And the reasons why we're doing these forums and these town halls is because over the past 5 years, our alliance has gone out and talked to thousands of Western Coloradans about the issues that are impacting their lives today. And we've really heard a lot more over the past year about how the budget crisis and the passing of H.R. 1 and some other federal policies are really showing up in our local communities and impacting everything from our public lands to our health care to our food accessibility and all sorts of things. So those were some of the topics we covered last week. We're going to cover some of those topics again today. We have some of the same folks who had prepared questions and stories to share that are back, but we also have new folks. And we're also going to take questions from the room today. And I'll let Arlo explain a little bit more about how that's going to work.
So there are note cards and pens, writing utensils at every table. Go ahead and write your questions there. We've got folks who are going to be helping pick those up, including Bella and Tyler and Sarah. So if you have a note card, just sort of signal to them. If you'd like the chance to read it out, go ahead and put your name on it. But if you'd rather that Em or I read that, you can just leave it anonymous, and we'll be selecting the questions that are most commonly asked, the questions that are most relevant to Western Slope issues. On that topic, in terms of audience participation, there are fans I should have had one up here. Fans at everybody's table. Somebody wave them. We encourage really a lot of very respectful audience participation. So if you hear something that resonates for you, that is important to you, give that a wave. Please make sure all your devices are off. We only had a couple cell phones go last time. You don't want to be that person. It's never fun, right? For those of you who are asking questions, on that other mic, you do need to get it a little closer to your face than the one I've got. And we've got a little blue tape there for you, so you know right where to go. Anything else I need to cover on this?
We do have a timer, just so folks know. We're asking folks to keep their remarks to 3 minutes, and Senator Bennet, if you're okay to keep them to 3 minutes too, just to make sure we cover a lot of ground and make sure everybody gets a chance to ask those questions. All right, and I am taking a note from my board chair that last time I didn't do a membership plug for Western Colorado Alliance at the beginning of the program. So I'm going to change that and make sure I do it right up front, which is if you are new to Western Colorado Alliance, please come and talk to any of our staff or our members who are here today and learn a little bit more. But we are here as your local community alliance for action from the grassroots level. We work on everything from public lands to childcare to affordable housing, all the way, from Uray to Grand Junction and into Rifle, and we have folks from all of those communities here today. So thanks for making the trip, and please become a member if you'd like to learn more. All right, did I do a good job? Okay, got it. Check this time. All right, so without further ado, I think we're ready to get started. Oh, thank you. Sorry. One other thing. Thanks, Arlo. We do have an empty table here with some seats. He's like, oh no, I'm at the wrong table. But you will just wanted to quickly note, we do have a table in the center with some empty chairs. And that's just to be symbolic and remember the folks in our community who aren't feeling safe coming into public space with us these days. We're living through a very frightening time of ICE overreach and enforcement. And the Sentinel reported 2 weeks ago that 240 members of the Mesa County community have been deported and detained from our own community, and that leaves a hole for us here and all across the country. So we wanted them to, some of those folks are here to ask questions today, but for those who didn't feel like they could be here, we are having them here in spirit with us. So that is what the center table is about. All right, and without further ado, I think if you're ready, Senator Bennet, we're going to jump into questions. All right, so our first question asker was going to be, I'm sorry, I keep getting ahead of the game here.
I'm the first question asker. That's right. So, Senator Bennet, we're really grateful to have you here. We've got about 3 minutes here for a bit of an introduction. And also, the big question we've heard from most people we've talked to so far is, why make the switch from Senate to running for governor?
Thank you. Thank you all for being here today. I'm Michael Bennet. Let me say something about myself to answer that question, which I think about the empty table that you have here today. And the issues that we're now confronting as a nation are incredibly personal to me, partly because my mother was born in Warsaw in 1938. That was the year where Hitler rolled into Poland. And she and her parents were the only people in that family who survived. An aunt also. Everyone else was killed. And my mom was separated from her parents for 3 years during that war. And when Donald Trump was elected president, and she was told they were killed, that they were dead, that she would never see them again. And when Donald Trump became president of the United States the last time and was separating children from their families at the border of the United States, my mother called me. She doesn't call me all the time. Sometimes she calls me and says, "Thank you for ripping Bobby Kennedy's face off." But this was a time that she called to say something else, which was that she saw herself and the kids at the border of the United States, and that we had to do everything we could to fight for the kids that he was trying to separate from their parents. And that's what I've continued to try to do. Before I was even in the Senate, I was the superintendent of schools in Denver, where we fought very hard to create the opportunity for dreamers to be able to get an in-state college tuition here in Colorado. And I was part of the Gang of Eight that wrote the immigration bill in 2013. I was one of the 4 Democrats. McCain led the Republicans. The last comprehensive immigration bill we passed in America never went to the House, or it was killed in the House, but it had a pathway to citizenship for the 12 million people that are here that are undocumented, the most progressive DREAM Act that had ever been written, the visa stuff that was so important to Colorado's economy, to our farmers and ranchers and farm workers, and also to our ski resorts. And it had security as part of the deal that we made with the Republicans and each other. I just came from Club 20 before I came here today. And this is an unbelievable thing I'm about to tell you, but they were a signatory to the Colorado Compact that I wrote with Colorado that was the basis for my work on the Gang of Eight bill. It's just a reminder. They were very enthusiastic supporters of that effort. It's a reminder of where the American people really are on this issue. They are where we were when we passed that bill. They understand that it's essential to who we are as a nation of immigrants and a nation committed to rule of law to have an immigration system just like the one that I described that we were trying to do with the Gang of Eight, and unlike the one that Donald Trump is inflicting on America today, that's about fear and hatred and dividing the American people in ways that actually we don't want to be divided. And I don't think it's naive to say that. I think that actually, if we put our minds to it, we can beat the chaos and division that Donald Trump represents and replace it with something far better than that. I'm going to stop because my time is up.
We appreciate you playing by the rules. All right, our first question asker is Emily Powell, Executive Director at Housing Resources of Western Colorado, to ask a question about affordable housing.
Hi, Emily Powell. How are you?
That switch is a little tricky. Okay. I'm going to warm us up. Senator, good to see you again.
Wonderful to see you.
Again, Emily Powell, Housing Resources of Western Colorado. We are a nonprofit organization based here in Junction, serving the entire Western Slope, part of the NeighborWorks America network as well. I'm asked to read a story from one of our clients, so I'll start off with that. This is Sarah's story. Sarah was one of our first home buyers in our down payment assistance program that we launched about 2 years ago. Since then, we've helped more than 115 people buy a home in our 4-county region for that program. And Sarah's story is just lovely. She writes, "The support from the down payment assistance program has allowed me to keep my childhood home, a place filled with countless memories and a sense of heritage. I'm now able to continue my grandparents' and parents' dream of what they wanted my 100-year-old craftsman house in downtown Grand Junction to look like. I have sadly watched my grandparents and parents who laid down the building blocks of my future pass away in front of my eyes. Because they didn't have a will, I had to enter a years-long battle with attorneys to keep this house in my family, even though my relatives wanted to sell it. You can imagine how expensive that was. So when it came time to purchase my home and put it in my name, I was struggling immensely. My first mortgage lender told me about this down payment assistance program. She and the amazing team members at Housing Resources quickly came together to secure the financing for me. It happened in the blink of an eye, and now I officially have my name on the house that has been in my family for generations. Without this program, owning this home would have been an unattainable dream. The program has turned me into a homeowner, which means I can pass a legacy onto my future kids. Thank you to everyone who made this possible. This has made a long-lasting impact on my life, and I am deeply thankful." I love that story. Sarah's situation was kind of unique in buying her parents' and grandparents' home, but she has a very universal statement here, which is, without this program, owning this home would have been an unattainable dream. And that is something that far too many Western Slope families feel. So, that was a long queue up to my question, Senator Bennet. You have been very supportive at the federal level of housing policy. You and I have had that conversation before. At the state level, a lot of us in the housing field have concern that some of the state's efforts are misdirected or just inadequate. If you were elected governor, what would be your priorities to improve housing affordability, especially in communities like those on the Western Slope?
Thank you. And let me also say, I'm going to answer the question about why I'm running for governor. So I'm just going to look for the right opportunity to do it. But the other stuff, I'm just very passionate about what you said. Thank you. And let me tell you 3 stories nobody here has that I was thinking about when you were talking. I was thinking about the first time 5 or 6 years ago, I talked to somebody in Uray who said to me, who was running a manufacturing business there. He was making actually it was something to be able to help drink water while you were hiking. I don't remember the details of it. But he said to me, you know what my biggest disadvantage of being a business person in Colorado is? It's the fact that I have to sleep on the factory floor of my enterprise in Montrose, and so do my workers, because nobody in Montrose can afford to live here. I think about in the story that you were just telling, and the mobile home park that I was just in the Roaring Fork Valley of Colorado just a couple weeks ago, meeting with the families of the people who actually miraculously were able to buy their mobile homes, to buy their mobile home park, and tell me the story of being able to send their kids to Basalt to go to the elementary school there and have 3 generations of Latino families in the middle of that valley that's become so difficult for anybody to afford to live, to know that they will always be there, that they will be able to pass from one generation to the next, the kind of housing that you just described. That is out of reach for many, many people in Colorado. I think about the story of being at Ouray and seeing 20 new workforce housing units that were built partly with the Telluride Foundation, that at the end of each of these 20 units is a house that's built for, at least occupied today, by a woman who is providing child care to that community, 10 kids at one end, 10 kids at the other. That's 20 adults that are now working there but also able to live there, and 20 kids that are getting child care and allowing their parents to work. Otherwise, it would never happen. And we are in a housing crisis all over the state of Colorado. I have said from the beginning of this campaign that I believe that any working person who is spending more than 30% of their income on housing can't live a middle-class life. That we should be the first state in America where we commit to each other that no working person should, thank you. I thought you were making me shut up. I appreciate it. That it's so unusual that somebody says yes. No, I'm kidding. We should be the first state in America that nobody has to spend more than 30%. All over the western slope of Colorado, people are spending 40%, 50%, 60% on housing. And we can't do that anymore, and we got to do a bunch of things to change it. I think we should use the state's balance sheet to make it cheaper to build workforce housing in this state. I think we should cut red tape all across Colorado to make it cheaper and easier to build housing near transit, and to be able to build dense housing that we need. Our kids need the chance to be able to buy into the American dream. They have no chance today. I've been doing meeting after meeting after meeting. I've done one here in the basement of the library here with people, I said kids, people that are 25 to 35 years old. These are people who will not come to my town halls. They will not come to my meetings. They hate politics. They hate politicians. They hate the political parties. And they believe that we're not even making room for them in Colorado. That we don't have the decency to do what's necessary so they can live in Colorado. And I can tell you, you know this, it's harder on the western slope than anywhere else to afford this housing. So this has to be the effort of 6 million people in Colorado. The entire state needs to lean into this. If our kids are going to be able to afford to live here, build equity here, know they can contribute to our economy. I think about the kids. I know, I'm done. I got to stop. I'll come back to it. But this is the number one issue in Colorado today. And the fortunate thing about it, unlike some of the issues we wrestle with, we actually know what to do to fix this problem. It's a question of whether we have the will and dedication and sense of moral responsibility. I've been telling people in Colorado, I don't care if you think you're the most conservative person in our state or the most progressive person in our state. If our kids can't afford to live here, it doesn't matter. We have a moral obligation to fix this problem, and we are not addressing it.
Thank you, Senator Bennet.
Arlo.
Yeah.
I forgot to give a shout out to the Just Housing Alliance, and we work very closely with them. And thank you for the work you do in bringing these issues to the forefront. You're doing great work. Thank you so much. And thank you, Senator Bennet, for that answer.
Question.
Well, thank you. We've got a follow-up from the Just Housing team. We're fortunate to work with groups like Housing Resources of Western Colorado, and also Colorado Homes for All. And we have a question that we're asking in partnership with them. If you were elected governor, would you be willing to lift the statewide ban on rent stabilization so that local governments have that tool in their toolbox to address housing?
Where are you? Who asked the question? Or no, that's not the right. You're the interlocutor. I'm willing to consider anything to build more affordable housing in Colorado. I will say that my bias runs in the direction of the need to build more housing all over this state, and especially affordable workforce housing. Partly, by the way, that comes from the fact that I used to be the superintendent of schools in Denver, and I did faculty meetings every single day in Denver at the end of the school day, every day. And I never met a teacher who didn't live in Denver. That was one of the awesome things about teaching in Denver, unlike Portland or Seattle or San Francisco, you could actually live in the community where you work. And today, all over Colorado, that's no longer true. You can't, if you're a teacher in the Roaring Fork Valley, the only way you can afford to live there is if you win a housing lottery run by your school district. That is insane that's the gilded age that we're living in right now. It is the gilded age that we're living in right now. And I'm willing to consider anything that will help.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Hannah. Hannah is here to also ask a question from one of our members from Garfield County last week who couldn't make it back. So.
How about now? Okay. Good afternoon, Senator. Thank you again for being here. As Emily said, my name's Hannah Arauza. I am staff at Western Colorado Alliance. I'm our community organizer based in Rifle, and my turf is Garfield County. Today I have the honor of reading a question from one of our residents in Rifle. She's a member leader of ours. Unfortunately, she came down with a cold and couldn't read this herself, but her name is Deb Grizzle, and this is her question. Hello, I'm Deb Grizzle, and I live in Rifle, Colorado, right off I-70. You might have driven past it to get here today. I was here before I-70, so I've seen a lot of change.
Wow, that's amazing, actually. That's amazing.
Her family's been there for generations. She knows everyone in town. And I'm good with change, but change is something we need to be strategic about. One change that I see coming is my ability to drive. Today, I am perfectly capable of driving my grandkids to the soccer fields, and they really love to go to Costco out in Gypsum and the secondhand stores in Glenwood Springs. I also live in Rifle's senior housing and regularly drive my neighbors to Valley View Hospital in Glenwood for specialty care, and Grand River Health, Rifle's local hospital. And I need to get around too. I'm trying to put together my will, and I've been to Glenwood at least twice recently trying to find a document that I thought was there. But I won't be able to drive forever. I-70 is already intimidating to drive. In 2025, almost 26,000 vehicles passed by Rifle on I-70 each day. That number is only going up. We will need another option in the future, and that's why we've been organizing to expand local bus service and other transit options in Western Garfield County. But since the county cut transit funding for 2026, we're now scrambling to maintain the limited bus service we already had. Public transportation is something that all communities need, but small rural municipalities have unique barriers to establishing and maintaining service. For example, we have very limited revenue streams, electorates that are prone to being tax averse, and small siloed population centers with large distances in between. And these challenges apply to more than just transit. Many systems of basic infrastructure are harder to set up in rural communities. And here's a question. If elected, what can you do to streamline the process for small rural communities to work together to develop and fund public infrastructure and support communities that are trying their best to do it themselves?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. And first of all, streamlining the process, you heard that in the question. That is it. That again is asking this question about, does every regulation actually make sense? Do we have too much red tape in this state? And I think actually the answer is yeah, we really do. And it's not only businesses I hear it from. It's county commissioners and mayors and others who are saying it's just too hard and too expensive for us to make the decisions that we need to make, whether it's transit, transportation, or housing. And it's unusual for us to be hearing this from both sides of the aisle, but we are hearing this from both sides of the aisle, all of us. I think we need to act on it. Rural, we have a decision to make in this nation about whether or not rural America is even going to exist. And if you don't have rural hospitals, rural America is not going to exist. If you don't have rural schools, it is not going to exist. If you don't have rural transit, it is not going to exist. It won't. And this is a real challenge in Colorado. We have amazing rural transit. You think about RAFTA in the Roaring Fork Valley. You think about the work that's now being done up near Steamboat and Hayden, where they're just getting started at putting a regional authority together to be able to address the transit issues there. And we heard from the questioner about the work that they're doing in that valley too. And I think in the end, we're never going to be able to afford it unless we address Tabor, unless we address the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, unless we're willing to reform it, and unless we're willing to be able to have a conversation with the people of Colorado about why we shouldn't be shackled to a set of political decisions that was made 40 years ago that have put, our hands tied behind our back, whether we're teachers or students or a senior citizen who's living in Rifle is worried about how she's going to get through Glenwood Canyon. All these issues are related to that. Now, I'm going to finish with the time just by saying she said something very important. Tax-adverse rural counties. What do you do about that? That is an amazing question. What you do about that is be honest with the people about what you're actually asking for, be clear about what you're actually asking for, and take the time to build a political coalition. I've devoted my entire adult life to this, to build political coalitions that brings people together to solve their own problems. I do not think that a one-size-fits-all solution from Denver on housing, on childcare, on healthcare, on transit and transportation actually is likely to work very well. I do think the reason you're a community organizer, I'll bet, is that you agree with me that there is incredible imagination and intelligence all across the state of Colorado at the local level. It has to be unleashed. We have to take away some of the red tape that is suffocating. We have to have some of the resources by changing the way Tabor works to be able to fund the things that we're talking about, and we have to engage people at the local level to solve their problems, like the lack of housing, in a way that makes sense for the people that live there. And we don't do that in our politics anymore. And I think that if Colorado could demonstrate to the rest of the country that we can build coalitions like that in rural and urban America, we would be doing a whole country a service by doing that.
Woo, we agree with that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Hannah. Leo, would you like to come up? Yeah, come on up. So changing direction a little bit here.
All right. Yeah. Good afternoon. My name is Leo Zhu. I am a junior at Palisade High School in Palisade, Colorado, here to represent West Slope Youth Voice, a student-run organization supporting and advocating for youth, people, and youth issues in the Western Slope. Recently, us students here in the Western Slope have seen an increase in the presence of ICE agents in our community over the past few months. As an immigrant to the United States myself, this is especially a concern for me. Although I am very grateful and fortunate that my personal process of immigration went very smoothly, this is unfortunately not the case for the majority of other immigrants, the vast majority of whom are seeking a better life. The consensus among me and many of other youth voices in the Western Slope is clear. We do not want ICE in the Western Slope. Many of us have already taken action against this, such as the case when hundreds of Grand Junction High School students participated in a walkout 2.5 months ago on January 30th. Thus, it is evident that a top concern among the youth is ICE and other immigration enforcement in our communities. Thank you for listening to my story, and my question to you, Senator, is this. If elected as governor, what would your administration do to ensure the protection of our communities?
Thank you. And thank you for your question. Thank you for being here. And I'll say, to come back to the question you asked me at the outset, at this stage of my life, my only political party really are the 3 kids that Susan and I have. By the way, when I started this job, they were 9, 7, and 4. They're now 26, 25, and 21. And the kids that I work for in the Denver Public Schools, and kids all over, and I've said this all over Denver, so I'm not just saying it because I'm here, all over rural Colorado, whose parents want essentially the same thing that the parents in Denver want for their kids, but can't because we're divided by politics that actually makes no sense. And a huge part of what we need to do is engage the next generation of Coloradans in this effort. As I said earlier, they don't feel like they're going to be able to afford to live in Colorado. It's too expensive for them. Have we made room for them? And their voices need to be let into the political conversation so we actually start to make rational choices that will support them. In the meantime, it's critically important for Colorado to push back against ICE. It's critically important that we push back against the violation of people's civil rights. It's critically important that we push back against the use of excessive force. This should not be a state, nor should there be any state in America where federal law enforcement agencies show up with masks. It should not be a state where federal law enforcement agencies show up without a warrant and knock on your door or pound down your door. It should not be a state, as I said at the very beginning, where kids are separated from their parents. Yet that has happened not just in Colorado, but on the western slope of Colorado, in Durango and other places. So I just want to say that I know it's not a small thing for you to be here. There are people, there are immigrants all over the state of Colorado who are citizens of the United States, who are carrying their passports with them for fear that they're going to be arrested on the side of a road by a rogue federal law enforcement agent. And I just want to say that it takes a lot of courage for you to be here. I'm grateful that you're here, and I'm grateful that you raised the issue that you've raised. And I want to say one other thing to you. How old are you?
16.
16 years old. So Donald Trump will have been your president for 8 years. I'm going to add a couple. Yeah, exactly. You should say sorry. Because let me tell you what these kids are saying to me. They're saying, you have given us this Gilded Age economy that will not allow us to buy housing, will not allow us to afford childcare, will not allow us to pay for our college. That's what you've given us. And on top of that, you've given us the chaos and division of Donald Trump. And let me tell you something, they don't really care much whether you voted for Trump or you voted against him. Because the people that voted against him, and I'm certainly one, lost to Donald Trump. I blame him for many things. But getting elected is not one of those things. I blame the National Democratic Party, of which I'm a part, for losing to Donald Trump twice. And the only reason this young man is having to ask that question in 2025, the age of 16 in 2025 in this community, is because we lost that election to Trump. And he unleashed this politics of division and chaos and hatred all across our country. And we should not do that again. And to avoid it, the opposition in this country, just as it did 100 years ago when we were living through another Gilded Age, just like this one, we have to build a coalition in service of the next generation of Coloradans, in service of the next generation of Americans, and I have no doubt that we will prevail. And hopefully somebody 5 years from now won't have to come here and ask the same question you're asking. So thank you very much.
Thank you both. All right. We're going to take some questions from the crowd, since we are getting them. So kind of in a similar vein, thank you. And Leo, thank you so much for making the time to be here. And West Slope Youth Voice for taking time out of your weekend. So kind of in a similar vein, this is from Mary Lou in the crowd. So I'm not sure if you've heard of the new, the bills kind of battling out in the State House this year about the equitable treatment and overtime rules for farm workers. So in a similar vein, there's a question of how, as governor, would you act to protect the fair labor standards for farm workers in this community, especially in Western Colorado?
Thank you for the question. Thank you for the question. When I went back to D.C., the first committee I asked to be on was the Agriculture Committee, and I'm still on it all these years later. It's the only committee I've stayed on because it's so important to Colorado. And in the time that I have been there, I have been the lead Democrat who's worked with the farm workers the whole time. And I've carried a bill year after year after year that would address the labor issues and put folks who are undocumented on a pathway to legalization, sometimes on a pathway to citizenship. I was the person who negotiated the farm worker provisions in that Gang of Eight bill with Dianne Feinstein and Orrin Hatch and Little Marco. Whatever, I don't know what happened to him, but but it is work that I have done, and I as a result of that, understand how difficult that work is and understand how important these protections are. And I continue to support that as governor. What? I'm not talking about the current legislation. I was talking about the work that I have done. And thank you. I'll take. Okay. I do think it's incredibly important for us to recognize that the food in this country we would get none of it if it weren't for the farm workers in the country, and most of the farm workers in the country are immigrants, and if it were up to me, they would all be on a pathway here. And that's another good reason not to re-elect Donald Trump.
Thank you very much. We now have an audience question from Ryan Sedgley, who says, my wife was forced out of her 15-year career with the National Park Service and the U.S. Forest Service. As governor, what would you do to protect and help our public land management agencies and their employees?
I hope, first of all, that we could, hire as many people as possible that are getting let go by the federal departments. I know that's not going to be easy because of the terrible state budget, but these are incredibly qualified and talented and experienced people, especially at a moment when we have never faced bigger water challenges than the ones we face right now, and bigger challenges with respect to fire, wildland fire, than we do right now. So I think that's number one. Number two, we've got to continue to fight to make sure these public land agencies are staffed properly, and it has been really horrific to see what the Trump administration has done to close them. And we got to fight for that as well. I also want to say that one of the reasons that one of the things I'm most grateful for is the opportunity as your senator to have worked with local communities, most of them on the western slope of Colorado, to protect 700,000 acres of public lands, from Hermosa Creek in Durango to Camp Hale in outside of Vail to Camp Amachi on the eastern plains of Colorado, and a whole bunch of places in between. And as governor, I would fight to make sure we protect those public lands, but also to make sure that Donald Trump could never sell them off. We're close to the Utah line, and one thing I am going to do before I leave that place, it may be the last thing I do, is make sure that there is a bill that is introduced to put the public lands of Utah in a public trust until Mike Lee is no longer in the United States Senate.
Thank you, sir. All right. Elvia, would you like to ask your question?
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Buenas tardes, candidato.
Thank you.
Gracias por asistir y por escuchar mi historia.
Hello, candidate. Can you hear me? Okay. Hello, candidates. Thank you for being here and listening to my story.
Yo me llamo Elvia y le vengo a platicar de mi preocupación sobre los cortes que están sucediendo.
My name is Elvia, and I'm here to tell you my worries over the cuts and decisions that are happening.
Desde que comenzó la administración, yo personalmente me siento excluida de esta nación que llamo mi hogar. Emocionalmente y como residente no me siento salva, no me siento confiada de salir a trabajar, ni de asistir a eventos sociales, tal por lo que está pasando en estos tiempos de incertidumbre y miedo.
Since the beginning of this administration, I personally feel excluded from this nation I call home. Emotionally and as a resident, I do not feel safe. I don't feel confident in going out to work nor assisting social events because of what is happening during this time of fear.
He perdido familias en estos días, ha sido apartados de nuestras vidas, deportados, alejados, separados de sus hijos.
I have lost family these days. They have been taken from our lives, deported, taken, and separated from their children.
Estas injusticias de la administración me dan terror y coraje. Yo tenía la esperanza de ser ciudadana para poder votar y hacer una diferencia. Pero veo que mi gente está siendo maltratada y deportada, saliendo de las cortes, tratando de hacer las cosas legales. Mi ahijado fue deportado de un gasolín, dejando su familia abandonada y sin seguridad.
These injustices from the administration give me fear and anger. I had the hope of becoming a citizen so that I can vote to make a difference, but I see my people being hurt and coming out of the courts, attempting to do the legally things. My godson was deported from a gas station, leaving his family abandoned and with no security.
No puedo regresar a trabajar por el peligro, ni salir de mi hogar por miedo de no regresar. Temo de dejar a mi esposo, quien está en silla de ruedas y me necesita. Mi hija, que tiene Down syndrome, sin su madre.
I cannot go back to work because of the dangers it might bring, nor I can leave my home for fear of not coming back, and leaving my husband who is in a wheelchair and my daughter who has Down syndrome without her mother.
Ellos no miran lo que hacen las personas por este país, nuestro sacrificio, nuestro cuidado, nuestra lealtad a las oportunidades que nos brinda el sueño americano.
They do not see what our people do for this country, our sacrifice, our care, and the loyalty to the opportunities that the American dream gives us.
Gracias. Yo estoy espantada, mi familia, mi comunidad está espantada, pero yo estoy aquí porque soy residente de este país. Mi voz importa y la voy a usar para que los candidatos me escuchen.
I am terrified. My family, my community is scared. But I'm here because I'm a resident of this country. My voice matters, and I'm going to use it so that our candidates can hear us.
Estamos preocupados de que el gobernador Polis esté cediendo a la presión federal en lugar de defender a los coloradenses vulnerables.
We are concerned that our Governor Polis is yielding to federal pressure instead of defending vulnerable people from Colorado.
Si usted es elegido, ¿cómo se opondrá firmemente a la política de inmigración de la administración? ¿Qué pasos concretos tomará para asegurar que Colorado sea un estado donde los residentes se sientan seguros, bienvenidos y puedan acceder a recursos para tener vidas saludables y justas?
If elected, how will you firmly oppose the administration immigration enforcement policies? What concrete steps will you take to ensure Colorado is a state where residents feel secure, welcome, and able to access resources for healthy, just lives?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
You mentioned the American dream, and I want to come back to that. Tell me if I'm speaking too quickly, or are you translating what I'm saying?
Oh, no, he's translating.
Oh, he is, okay.
Yeah.
Well, then you tell me if I am. But you mentioned the American dream, and I want to come back to that at the end, because I think that's really what's at stake. That's the only reason that you're here. That's the only reason that almost everybody is here, to be able to live the American dream. And that increasingly is out of reach, not just for immigrants in America, but also for the next generation of Americans. And that has created a lot of the political turmoil that we're facing. But to answer your question very directly, I think we need a governor who's going to push back against Trump, fight against Trump, ensure that he's not going to be able to send those federal agents into Colorado with masks on and without warrants, and separate parents from their kids. That's what you're talking about, and actually that's how I started our meeting today, because I agree that's such a fundamentally un-American thing to do that he's doing. And we have to make sure that we remind people why it's important for the United States to have a functional immigration system, because our economy can't work if we have people that can't go to work because they're so scared that they can't go there. We cannot have a functional society if we have people who can't send their kids to school because they're so scared that they can't send their kids to school. And this is a moment where it's really important for all of us to put our arms around the immigrant community in Colorado and say, we want you here. We know the contribution that you've made, and that this is a passing political moment, hopefully, in American history. But that's going to depend on what we are able to do. Donald Trump isn't doing things really that he didn't say he was going to do. And we need a political coalition in America that will overcome that and be able to give people confidence that the American dream is possible for them. That if you come to this country and you work hard and you support your family, that there's a way for you to become a citizen of the United States of America and contribute to our nation. That is the history of the United States of America. And by the way, it's not a woke history of the United States of America. It is the history of the United States of America. Thank you for today.
Thank you.
All right. Mesa County Clerk Bobby Gross is here to ask a question.
Well, you must be doing something right. That's amazing.
Thank you for being here today. My name is Bobby Gross. I'm the elected county clerk in Mesa County. We have seen an increase in threats against election officials, staff, and poll workers. This includes individuals attempting to test the system, vetted threats made online, in person, and via email. In Colorado and across the country, incidents have escalated to include fentanyl being sent through the mail-in ballots, ballot drop boxes being set on fire, and notably a firebombing in Archuleta County Elections Office. We also hear increased chatter about potential intimidation efforts at vote centers and at ballot drop boxes. It is increasingly important to strengthen our safeguards and security measures. At the same time, federal support is declining, including reduction into CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency resources, and Help America Vote Act, the HAVA funding. What specific steps would you take to support Colorado election officials in protecting election infrastructure, strengthening cybersecurity, and ensuring elections are adequately funded at the local level?
Thank you very much. Thank you for your service, by the way. Thank you for your service, and thank you to the poll workers and poll watchers of this county and across the state that are doing this work. I mean, I do not have in my mind what the right, changes to statute we could do to fix that or address the threats or the fentanyl issue. So if you are thinking about those things, I'd like to know those things. But let me just say this. It has been years since I've been hearing poll workers in Colorado say that they feel totally abandoned by all of us. They show up to do it at every election period, but other people aren't there to support the work that they're doing. And it can be a very, very scary an intimidating thing. It shouldn't be, but it is. And I think we could show up together as citizens and just say, we're here to support the work that you're doing. We're here to make sure everything's okay. We're here to provide water to people. Thank God we live in a state where you can do that when people vote. And that's really important. I think the other thing we have to do is defeat the quote-unquote Save America Act, which Donald Trump is running through the United States Senate, which is only going to make matters worse. It would completely destroy the golden standard system that we have here in Colorado, not just of mail ballots, but of our registration laws and the ability to do election day registration for young people to be able to register in college. I mean, that is so much, they call it a voter ID law. It has almost nothing to do with voter ID, and it needs to be defeated. And we don't want to make matters worse. The issue on cyber is really a lot tougher. And a good example, I'm on the Intelligence Committee in the Senate. That's where CISA reported, which is the group that you're talking about that used to be responsible for making sure the Russians were kept out of our election system, to make sure that the Chinese and the Iranians were kept out of our election system. And now Donald Trump has basically just destroyed the entire agency, as you're saying. And I don't know, frankly, what Colorado could do to step into that agency. We need to have a functional federal government on this issue. And I believe this is one of those things that there are citizens all over the state, whether Democrats or Republicans, who are going to stand up in the end to support our ability to defend ourselves against Russia. Donald Trump might not be one of those people, but there are a lot of other people that feel that way. And the same way with mail-in ballots. I was on the floor the other day and I said, I'd like to see Donald Trump, by the way, you can see it, you can read it, so you know I'm not making it up because I'm just here with you wonderful people. And I said, I'd like to see him come to the western slope of Colorado and take those mail ballots out of the hands of Republican voters on the western slope of Colorado, because they will never, ever give it to them. You know, it's a little bit like the immigration issue we were talking about earlier. I don't think that in the end, you know, Republican rural Colorado is going to support the idea of mass federal law enforcement agents invading our local spaces, warrantless attacks on our communities, the separation of kids from their parents. I know I'm a broken record on that, but I care deeply about that. I don't think they will. But this is about rebuilding a politics, too. Where's the question from the last person? Yeah, I may have lost her. Rebuilding a politics, too, that unifies us in a way that overcomes Trumpism. And I think that's possible. And standing up for Colorado's incredible system of elections and the incredible people that work for it, I think is the least that we can do. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, sir. We've had a couple different questions come up here for health care.
I'm going to have to answer one of those. I'm going to use to answer the very first question. So
don't worry. We've gotten a couple more. We'll feed that one back to you.
All right.
But Dr. Promenko, if you would like to come up and ask some questions about rural health care, we've had a couple come up through the questions from the tables.
Nice to see you too.
Senator Bennet, good to see you.
Nice to see you.
Thank you for being here, and thank you, the Colorado Alliance, as well, for the opportunity to ask you a question or two about a small topic of healthcare in America and Colorado. As stated, I'm Michael Bennet. I'm a family doc, been here for 28 years, 30 plus if you count my residency here, and a student of healthcare policy. And very concerned about, of course, the Medicaid system. Over a third of the government of Colorado is essentially going to, 36% is for Medicaid of the state expenditures. We're all concerned about the state of healthcare in our state and our country. And here in Colorado, these concerns are only made worse, of course, by Tabor, limiting revenue to about 3 to 4% of growth. At the same time, healthcare growth and inflation is probably outpacing that at least by 2 to 1. Obviously, there's a problem there as it squeezes out the other areas of the state that we want to invest in. 1 in 5 Coloradans are covered by Medicaid. 1 in 5. 40% of all the children in Colorado are covered by Medicaid. And as I stated, 36% of the expenditures of our state are in Medicaid. Now, not only do we struggle with the budget ramifications of Tabor, now we have H.R. 1. Our own congressperson, Representative Hurt, voted for H.R. 1, arguably one of the worst pieces of legislation this century, and really lacking any knowledge of what it's done to rural health of Colorado, or not understanding it. So, as the next governor of Colorado, easy question here, how do you intend to address Medicaid, over 36% of our budget, given Tabor, as well as the worsening effects of H.R. 1? And in context, one of my own passions, of course, as you answer that question, if you could include our system, which is essentially, and I'm a member of the industry as a physician, is the sick care system profits off of illness. As you answer this question, how do you include prevention in your answer?
Thank you. So let me first say, Doctor, I would say that it's hard to pick this. I'd say housing is the first issue. I think healthcare is the second issue, and I would say mental health care and healthcare as I travel our state. And since I generally try to say the same thing in one room that I've said in the other, let me just tell you what I said in Club 20 before I came over here. And I was repeating myself from stuff I've said on the floor before and in other places, which is, this is the one place where I am a true Bolshevik or a true socialist. I think we should have, yeah, you should applaud, we should have a universal healthcare system in the United States of America. And I believe healthcare is a right. You know, it is absurd to start where you ended with the sick care system that we have. We're spending twice as much as any other industrialized country in the world, and we're getting worse results. Our life expectancy is now 6 years shorter than the rest of the industrialized world. If you're African American in America, it is 12 years shorter than the rest of the world. Think about that. In the 1970s, before there was all kinds of technological advances in healthcare, we had the same lifespan, and now we don't. And everywhere I go in rural Colorado, I hear about the scarcity that exists in our system. Medicaid patients who don't have access to primary care. People who are making too much money to be on Medicaid but can't afford the private insurance they're forced to pay. Young people who are saying to me, what am I supposed to do? Take 2 or 3 jobs to pay for my terrible health insurance. A kid in Grand Junction who said to me 3 weeks ago in the basement of that library, I don't even go mountain biking anymore because I have a $10,000 deductible on my insurance, and if I get hurt, I'm done. That is the system that we have. So that is not, we're not going to be able to fix all that from Colorado, but we can address Medicaid in Colorado. And I think that what we really have to do is drive it toward the kind of primary care you were talking about. We need everybody in Colorado to be able to have access to primary care doctors. We have to have them have access to labs so they can know how they're doing, whether they're sick, and whether they can take care of themselves. We have to move the system away from paying for chronic care and hospital care, which is the most expensive care in America, and substitute it with the primary care that you were talking about. I'm almost out of time, but let me just say this. This is one of the most insidious aspects of Trump's terrible bill. It's not just that it cuts Medicaid. It's not just that it wrecks Colorado's budget. It also means that all the people that were on Medicaid but are no longer on Medicaid are going to go to the hospital to get their care at the most expensive price possible, which, guess what? We're all going to pay for because our insurance rates will go up. That is what is so insane about the system that they've proposed. And this is really one of the reasons that I'm running for governor. I think it is really important for us to have somebody who's in this job that understands something about how our healthcare system works, something about how budgets work, something about making hard decisions, because we're not going to be able to accept an annual 9% projected increase in Medicaid every single year without bankrupting the state government and not being able to spend money on any of the other stuff we've talked about here today. So it's really, really important. And I know my friend was here the other day. We're not going to sue our way to a better healthcare system in Colorado, or to a better education system in Colorado, or to less expensive housing or cheaper childcare in Colorado. It just is not going to happen. We need somebody who can help us unleash the genius at the local level, which I was talking about earlier. The people that are in this room, the primary care doctors and nurses all over Colorado who have a million ideas about how to make the system better, if only the Medicaid bureaucracy in Colorado would ever ask them for their opinion about anything, which it doesn't. And I commit to you that I will. So thank you for your question.
Thank you, Senator Bennet. We've got a quick question from the audience here. You mentioned mobile home parks. One issue facing mobile home park residents and many other communities in Colorado is water quality. We've got a lot of water issues in this state, but water quality is among them. The state is also facing a backlog of wastewater treatment plant permits and potentially deferring stronger clean water regulation until 2030. If you're elected governor, how will you support an acronym I can't read, to address water quality issues?
I mean, I think of water, the quality of water, like I think about healthcare. This is not a country that can't afford to make sure that everybody in this country has access to high quality drinking water, and Colorado needs to be one of those places. And we should work together where it's possible to streamline, regulations, as I said earlier, to make it easier to do the work. But that can't come at the expense of making sure that everybody in this state has access to high quality drinking water, and I'm committed to that. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator Bennet. Next, we have a question from our own chair of the board, Kevin Williams.
I guess the prerogative of the chair.
That's right.
That's good.
Okay. Whoa. I'm on. Good afternoon, Senator Bennet. Nice to see you here. My name is Kevin Williams, and I also serve on a rural electric cooperative board here in Western Colorado, Delta Montrose Electric.
Bunch of geniuses at that place. It's true.
However, I am speaking today solely in my capacity as the chair of the Western Colorado Alliance. And fun fact, I worked with your spouse, Susan, on energy policy issues way back in the George W. Bush administration.
That is amazing.
Yeah, so I know her well.
That is amazing.
The electricity system in Colorado and nationwide has undergone and continues to undergo a major transition, powered primarily by rapid and innovative advances in technology. Colorado has adopted an ambitious array of energy plans and policies, including greenhouse gas standards, resource adequacy requirements, clean energy tax credits, coal plant closures. It's a friendly audience. Beneficial electrification, and the list goes on and on. Currently, the state legislature is considering competing bills on data centers. Climate change is a real and present threat. Temperatures on average have increased 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit in the upper Colorado River Basin since 1895. And we are in the throes of a historic drought with dire water supply shortages. Western Colorado families are increasingly anxious about their monthly power bills. the average Colorado residential energy bill has increased by around 30% in the last 5 years, according to Electricity Price Hub. And utilities that recently joined the Southwest Power Pool's Regional Transmission Organization, the RTO, will see their costs increase in the near term, which means more rate increases. So, after all that fun fact stuff, my question is this. If elected, how would you describe your vision for Colorado's energy future, and what policies or programs would you advocate to address not only rising electricity costs, but also advancing a clean energy agenda for rural Colorado?
Thank you very much. Great question. Great question. Well, if I am elected governor, which I hope I will be, I think Colorado is in the position to be able to lead all 50 states in the answer to your question. At a time, by the way, when the inhabitant of the White House has as his energy policy Sarah Palin's cartoon version of drill, baby, drill. That is what we're dealing with today as a nation. So there is not going to be help or an example coming from Washington, D.C. And I think Colorado actually is in the position to be able to set an example for the rest of the country that we can get to net zero, which is the goal of our country, a state, and we can do it in a way that actually drives economic growth rather than reduces economic growth. But it's not going to be easy to do. I have proposed a cap and invest program like the one they have in Washington State, the one that they have in California. There would be a statewide cap on emissions in Colorado. My opponent in this race has said that he doesn't think that Tabor will allow it, but I haven't seen his answer. But that is one thing that I have done. I think that it is going to be critically important for us to address the energy increase issues, the cost increases. We have to keep the cost of energy low. We have to make sure that energy is not intermittent, that it's delivered in a way that's predictable for the people of Colorado and this country. And we have to produce as much clean energy as possible, which in Colorado we've got a good start doing, and I think we're going to be able to continue to do it over the next decade. But we also have to be honest about what the transition is going to look like from the fossil fuel economy that we're in today to the net zero economy that we can get into, that we will be in 25 years from now. And my view about what's so heartbreaking, one of the things about Trump's win is that the majority of the American people believe climate change is real. The majority of the American people believe that we need to do something about it. And by the way, most of the ones that don't believe that know that their kids believe it. So for them, it's actually important that we do it. And yet we elected a climate denier in the White House because he was able to convince the American people that we were going to destroy the economy by pursuing the climate goals that you and I are talking about today. I completely and emphatically disagree with that. But we need a model that shows that it's true. And in Colorado, we've got a good basis for where, we're starting. But I think there's so much more we can do, which is why I have proposed that cap and invest program. And as we think about the changes that are coming, that are going to stress the grid in Colorado, that are going to stress our communities, we have to keep in mind that democracies don't do well when energy prices go up. If you think about the case of Putin invading Ukraine, and what the reaction in Europe was to that, to abandon a lot of the climate policies that they had pursued for a long time. I think the way for us to avoid that is to have as thoughtful a commitment to what this transition is going to look like here. And Trump is telling people it's impossible. I think over the next 10 years we can show the whole world, not just Colorado, not just the country, the whole world, that Colorado has led the way on this. And this is one of the fundamental reasons why I'm running for governor to begin with.
Thank you, Senator Bennet. And thank you, Kevin.
Max is giving us this. Cut it off.
Yep.
Max is telling us
We've hit time here. We want to make sure we've got time for folks to shake some hands. So we've
Could I
got
have 2 sentences to answer your original question?
I've got you beat. We've got a minute for the final question,
Okay, go ahead.
which is essentially you have a senior seat in the U.S. Senate.
Yeah.
You've been strong and effective there, and you have a lot of political capital. Is governorship really the best use of that capital?
It really is the best use of that capital. It really, really is the best use of that capital. Look, I hope all of us are reflecting on why this country is in the position that we're in right now. And it is completely unacceptable to me. Completely unacceptable to me as a parent and a citizen of this nation that we're having to sit here in 2025 and have the discussion on immigration that we're having today. That we've got a climate denier in the White House. That we have somebody in the White House who is enriching himself and his family to the tune of $5 billion in crypto, and nobody seems to even worry about it. By the way, I voted against my own party to try to stop Trump from doing the enrichment that he's doing today. So let me just say this. He is best understood as a symptom of our problem, not as the cause of all our problems. He is best understood of an economy where the American dream, to quote my friend's earlier question, where the American dream is out of reach for too many people, for a majority of people in America. And our form of that in Colorado is not having a single county where anybody thinks their kids are going to be able to afford to live here. And it's not just housing, it's housing, childcare, healthcare. It's the question whether or not our schools are preparing our kids for the 21st century, and I can tell you they are not, as a parent and a former school superintendent. And that's not on the schools, that's not their fault. It's because we haven't had the imagination to drag our system into the 21st century. So what I'm saying to you is, this is a moment where we have to address the core challenges in a gilded age where too much of the benefits of this economy have gone to the people at the very top. Working people, no matter what they do, can't afford to live a middle-class life. And our kids, no matter what they do, cannot afford to live a middle-class life. And if we don't answer that question, we never, ever drive a stake through Trumpism. These things are related to each other. And I think for all the reasons I said to the chairman, Colorado is in the position to set an example for all 50 states. This is a moment where the states and municipalities and the American people themselves are going to be the ones that change the course of American history, and that's why I am running to be your governor. The seniority that I have accrued that I think is valuable at this moment is all the moments that I've spent in red and blue counties all over Colorado, sitting side by side with people to protect 700,000 acres of public lands, to write the wind and solar tax credits in the bill that Trump blew up, to be able to write the child tax credit, which at least for a year cut childhood poverty in America by almost 50%. That's the experience that I am bringing back to Colorado, in addition to having the experience of being the superintendent of the largest public school district in the entire state and leading an effort in that school district that resulted in greater increases of student achievement than in any other district in the entire state and maybe the country. So I am just asking you to consider the question when you're thinking about whom to support, whether we've got somebody who's actually had the experience to be able to color outside the lines, to be able to make the hard decisions working with all of us that our kids actually need us to make. We're in a moment where it's really going to matter. You know, if the people 10 years ago had been sitting in a room just like this in this county, a lot of the issues we've been hearing about would be the same, except now they're worse because we haven't done anything to address any of it. We could have made housing less expensive in Colorado. We haven't. We could have made child care less expensive in Colorado. We haven't. We could have made health care more available and less expensive. We haven't. We could have made sure that we had an economy, a state where businesses actually felt like they could grow here, they could come here and succeed, and we're moving in the other direction. So If you really do believe this is an existential moment in American history, which I do believe, I hope you will support my campaign for governor, because there is no one riding to our rescue. I can tell you, Chuckles and those people, they're not coming here to help you. You are going to have to do it. Just like 100 years ago when we had another Gilded Age, and we began to invent new institutions, like the ACLU, which hadn't existed, like the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, which had never existed, like the modern labor movement that was able to provide FDR the basis of being able to give the American people, with their help, the New Deal. And that unleashed one of the longest and most successful progressive eras in human history, not just in American history. That is the moment that we're living in today. So I would encourage everybody, you're here, you don't need my advice on this, but encourage your friends to begin thinking about what we all can do to change this equation. Fight, 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 fight Trump. That's important, but it's not sufficient. Pointing out how corrupt he is, we lost 2 elections doing that. The American people are well aware of how corrupt he is. What we have to show the American people and the people of Colorado is that our exercise in self-government can actually make their lives better. That we can give them a chance to have the American dream. That's what this is all about. So that's why I'm running for governor. Thank you all for having me today.
Thank you, Senator. And if you are elected, we hope you meet with Western Colorado Alliance to solve some of these problems.